1969, I was 19 years old. I lived from when I was 10 years old till 18 years old in my parents' house in Phoenix, Arizona. And when I turned 18, I moved my freshman year. I went to Utah to go to school for my freshman year, and that was the end of the decade when I turned 19.
Can you tell us your opinion on the following events? The Tet Offensive.
The Tet Offensive was the dramatic events in Vietnam that pretty much swung the war, as I remember, in favor of the Viet Cong, which escalated the war, and Lyndon Johnson then decided to send in more and more troops, and as a result, 58,000 men and women were killed in Vietnam.
The student protests.
Which student protest?
Against the war.
Which student protest? Which one?
In general.
Oh, in general.
Yeah.
There were student protests everywhere. There were student protests in Tempe, Arizona, on Mill Avenue Bridge that I attended. That probably had 20,000 people attending it. The most famous protest was at Kent State, where the guards showed up and killed 4 people at Kent State during the protest for Vietnam. Then
the assassination of Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King's assassination came after JFK's and RFK's, and it was greeted by most Americans as once again a horrific piece of violence. He was shot dead in his hotel room as he came outside by Sirhan, I believe, and was a day of mourning throughout the entire country. There wasn't a day of mourning in my state because my state was a very racist state. They didn't have a great deal of value. So Arizona, I think, was the last state to make Martin Luther King Day a national holiday.
Were you a supporter of Martin Luther King?
Absolutely, I was a supporter of Martin Luther King. Yeah, both as a religious man as well as a political leader. Okay. He was a complete pacifist.
The assassination of Robert Kennedy.
I'm confused now. Robert Kennedy, was he killed by Sirhan, I think. I'm not real sure. Also, a very devastating blow to the Kennedy family. The Kennedy family just recently lost their assassination in Dallas to JFK. John Fitzgerald Kennedy was the president. At the time, the assassination of his brother, he was the Attorney General. And once again confirmed, like most of my friends and all of people I hung out with, that there needed to be gun legislation in the late 60s because there was too many guns in the United States.
So how was it like being alive during this era with all this, like, as you mentioned, like the violence and like the protests? Like, how did these events affect you, like, personally?
They affected me by making me far more liberal, made me more left-wing, turned me against the establishment, made me want to not be part of the capitalistic world. Is that because of Vietnam, the country ruined Vietnam. The United States did. The United States ruined Vietnam. They fought a war that they couldn't win. At the time, the whole civil disobedience issue that was arising because of the civil rights movement in the United States was clear to all of us who lived through it that African Americans deserved their equal rights. And so the Brown Board of Education was created.
So what can you tell us about your opinions on the 1968 Olympic athletes who raised their hands, arms for Black Power?
Yeah, that was they raised their hands in protest against the American white institution in Mexico City, 1968, and they all held up. I think 3 of them held up their black fists and gloves, representing Black Panthers. I thought it was a very symbolic protest of the Black Armed Movement. I don't believe any of them ever became very successful after that. That was probably the highlight of their careers, because from that point on, their lives went to hell, I think.
Do you have any important lessons that you can give to, like, our generation that you learned from your, like, to understand, like about the era of the
Yeah, get
60s?
involved, read newspapers, get political, understand who you're voting for, so you don't vote in ignorant, ill-read people. I think from what I've seen so far of your generation, especially with my son, maybe not my daughter, but definitely is that for being an international group of kids, I think the international group of kids are pretty ignorant. They don't read the paper every day. They don't understand what's going on. They might understand what's going on here, but as far as what's going on the planet that's going to affect the planet now, because in the United States during the 60s it was basically the United States. Now you got a chance to affect global issues, and so I think that everybody has to get more activist oriented.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any more?
I have. James, do you have any
Do you
questions?
have any?
Good.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
You're welcome.
Sir.
What class is this for?
AP Push.
What's that?
AP US History.
Good.